think we might be live, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, good people. I'm Kipling Primus, your host for tonight's town hall on matters of the heart. This evening, we want to discuss heart health and everything that can impact our hearts. We know that means relationships, family, work. All of these things can make our heart ache, so to speak. And we all know that stress will kill you. So, this evening, we're going to talk about healthy ways to face our everyday challenges. Some of these things you might know about, and some of these things you might struggle with. But hopefully, this evening, we'll provide a little hope, some healthy solutions, and a few new ways to make sure you're taking care of your heart and your mind. Now, before we get started, I'm going to ask our wonderful guests to please introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Miss Vita Brown from Sisters Empowerment. Miss Brown.
Brown. I am the founder and executive director of Sisters Empowerment Network. We serve in County, Georgia. Our organization purposes for victims and survivors of violence, as well as the Clayton County Task Force to educate our community about what we can do together to empower, educate, inspire, and help those victims that's struggling in abusive relationship find the resources and services and courage that they need to come out of those relationships into healthy ones.
Wonderful. And Dr. Candace Cooper Lovett.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as it was mentioned, Dr. Cooper Lovett, and I am the owner and CEO of a New Creation Psychotherapy Services in Fayetteville area group practice, and we focus on holistic care, mind, body, and spirit. And our huge focus, at least on my end, is in trauma, domestic violence. That's how me and Miss Vita here connected years ago, because of my passion for that work as well. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and sex therapist as well. And my practice has been in business since 2015. So this is our 7th year now.
Wonderful. And Monique, better known as Mo, Monique Bell from NAMI, Georgia.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. My name again is Monique Bell, but everyone calls me Mo. And I'm from NAMI, Georgia, in Henry Fayette. That's the name of our affiliate. So we cover the Henry, Clayton, Fayette, Coweta, South Fulton counties, so that we are able to provide mental health services through advocacy, education, and support. We do not provide counseling, but we do provide support, advocacy, and education. So thank you for having me. I look forward to being here.
Well, I am so happy to have you all here. We're also going to hear a little bit later on from Dr. Jane Morgan, a cardiologist with the COVID task force at Piedmont. But let's just jump right in with the question of the day. In all actuality, we know that the pandemic has, just laid bare a host of challenges. Families have been on somewhat of some kind of lockdown for the last 2 years. That's stressful, no matter what. And so we know that there's been an increase in mental health challenges. We know that there's been an increase in domestic violence. So my first question, if you are struggling, you realize it, something is going on and you need help. How do you ask for help? And Dr. Cooper Lovett, we'll start with you. How do you ask for help?
I believe it's just more or less, a lot of the times it's pride, unfortunately, that gets in the way. And so I feel like it's genuinely having to put the pride to the side and talk to someone that you trust, even if it's a friend or a family member, because I get it sometimes, even with the context of therapy, people have to build themselves up to even call to even speak to a therapist to schedule something. So I feel like the best thing is to first and foremost reach out to someone who is in your support system to say, hey, I think I'm really struggling right now, or even it's just to just release some things, just to say, what do you think, or offering, getting some insight from others that you care about and that care about you as well. So I think that's definitely a start before even getting to the therapy piece. Is just more or less talking to somebody you trust and say, hey, I think I may need some assistance here. What is your advice or insight for me as it relates to this?
And Vita Brown, what do you coach people? How do you explain to your constituents how to ask for help?
Well, first, provide a place where they feel safe enough to share. As Dr. Lovett said, it's a very difficult time to acknowledge that you're in an abusive relationship, first and foremost. So we want to be a place that they can call and come to, feel comfortable, so that I may recommend that they seek therapy or whatever. As Dr. Lovett said, connected together. And I think once our clients feel that they're not in a place of judgment, it's easier for them to open up and talk about the issues that's affecting them. And then we can guide them to the appropriate places to seek the help that they need to get them started back on a healthy path.
And Ms. Bell, Mo, what do people say maybe when they call into NAMI? How do people even know that they need to ask for help?
Well, typically when most people call NAMI or reach out to NAMI, it's because of a crisis that has taken place with themselves or their family members. Oftentimes people don't know where to turn, because when someone is released from a hospital setting after having a mental health crisis, they need additional support, and so does the family. So NAMI steps in to provide a level of support for not only the families, but for the person who is actually having a mental health crisis. So typically we get people after they have realized and had some level of crisis, and they come to us for support, which we welcome them with open arms.
And for everyone, that other thing, when someone comes to you and they're saying that they need help, what kind of response can you give? Because, a lot of us are struggling right now. Some of us are aware that we're struggling. For me, sometimes I look back and I go, oh, something was going on, in June. I don't know what, but clearly something was going on, because now I'm in a different place and I can tell. But at the time I was in it, I didn't know, I didn't realize. But if someone comes to you and says, hey, I think I need help, how do you respond to that? And Monique, you want to start this time?
Absolutely. When you know the signs and symptoms, which is one of the key ingredients in helping someone of a mental health crisis or one that's budding, then you can reach out to receive the kind of assistance with regard to counseling services, or if hospitalization is needed, or if there's a diagnosis that is needed, because sometimes you don't know exactly what is going on in the realm of mental health, which there's quite a bit of things that can take place. But then going to NAMI, we have a referral line, and that referral line provides you with referrals to mental health professionals, or you can go to your primary care physician. Sometimes your primary care physician will be able to provide you with resources. And in this pandemic, we know that many people do not have a primary care physician. So the other part is to go to your local mental health resources, which in South Fulton County, there are resources that I can refer people to. So those are the ways in which you would say, okay, I think I need help, or someone else is telling you that they believe that you may need some level of assistance, then you reach out. And some people don't necessarily reach out. So having a loving partner, friend, family member who has these resources, that's where, or can reach out to an organization such as NAMI, then you can provide them with the resources. And one of the ways is to connect with them empathetically and help them to say, hey, listen, you're not yourself. And I love you and I want you to be yourself, or your best self. And as a result of that, I'm sharing this information with you.
And Dr. Cooper Lovett, when someone comes to you and asks for help, are there things that you should look for in that request, or, in the manner? Are there things that let you know whether this is somebody just needs to vent, and I'll be that ear that they can vent to, or this is beyond my scope? How do you know when it's time that it's not just a girlfriend venting, or it's not just your brother being off for a couple of days, or a cousin that disappears and then shows back up and can't tell you what's going on? When these things happen, how do you know which thing is the one that means we need to get some immediate help, and which thing is the one that you can just be the ear, to listen and hear someone?
Most definitely. And I think a lot of it has to do with the experience of what they disclose of how they're feeling, especially when you start to get into the spaces of clinical depression, because then that's where you have to really start checking in, because, as we know, depression is very much a huge thing in our culture, just really worldwide, and it can be dangerous if we don't really check in on that. And so if a person is saying, hey, I feel like I don't want to be here anymore, just like that type of language is a red flag to say, okay, they really need to seek some assistance or help, versus I'm going through a circumstance, it's kind of a difficult time right now, is more tangible. But it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be that way tomorrow or even the next couple of days. But where it's something where they can't shake it, is sitting there, where it's becoming less of a tangible thing, but more of a disposition. Like, this is my experience every day. That's where it's kind of like a sign of saying, okay, perhaps you may need to seek out, some other resources, some guidance as it relates to talking to a therapist to really help get through, particularly as we call it, symptoms. I don't really care for that term in mental health, but the symptoms of what they're experiencing. And if it's overwhelming for them and they feel like they can't shake it on their own, that's the point where it's like, hey, perhaps you may need to seek some outside guidance or assistance to help you in this matter.
And Ms. Brown, that same question as it relates to relationships, because as you mentioned, we've been taught since children, keep your business to yourself. Don't let anybody know what's going on in this house. This is our house. How do we overcome that kind of culturally when we're talking about the person that we love and that loves us, but we're having a hard time in that love right now and we need help?
Yes, I think that approaching mental health and just of share personal things that's going on within the family dynamic is very important. And you're right. But I think taking the holistic approach to the friend aspect of, we are here not to judge, but to listen. And that's one of the things I make sure that we educate the community about. Victim shame sort of thing. And that's why a lot of times people are afraid to come forth. So again, we want to provide that platform as Sisters Empowerment Network, that they feel comfortable and they understand that we're not here to judge, we're here to help. And oftentimes, I may share a personal story or two, them feel that they are not alone or not. And a lot of times and it's kind of giving advice, but not sharing that we all have those points in our lives that, we need to vent and talk and share and go down the path of just helping one another, that it's okay to say someone, if you need to talk to someone, okay, we have to person that taboo, particularly in our community. That's a negative thing to seek help. And so to encourage them and let them know that it is okay to seek help if they need it, and embrace them if they just need to talk and get to that point.
Now, I don't even know how to say it, but we've seen a rash of suicides, in our community. The CEO at MARTA, the mayor in Hyattsville, Maryland, the Miss USA pageant winner, and now today, Miss Alabama. What are we missing? What is it that we should be looking for? What can we do to make sure that the people in our sphere who may be feeling this way don't follow through on those impulses? And, it seems that every time this happens, the people around that person, are saying that they were there. There were friends there. There were people there, but no one noticed or no one picked up. What are the things that we should be looking for, and how can we make sure that we're providing the support that's needed? Monique, you want to take this one to start?
I absolutely can overwhelmingly say that education for our communities is very key. And NAMI commits itself to educating the public on what to look for. So is a person just hopeless? Is a person talking about suicide? Are they, and most people, it's a myth to think that if you ask a person if they're thinking about it, that causes the person to actually want to try to complete suicide. But one of the things that we're missing is education. And that's one of the key things that NAMI provides is education on what you should be looking for. So we have free education that helps you not only to recognize the symptoms or signs. I know Dr. Lovett does not like symptoms, but whatever signs there are, which could be anything from giving away some of your items, having a hopeless attitude or demeanor. Also, too, actually researching. If you see somebody researching or collecting medication, these are things that should alert us to the fact that somebody may be thinking about this. And if they're thinking about it, again, sometimes people will not ask you questions, but you have to ask pertinent questions so that you will then be able to help them. And then you can lead them to the suicide crisis line, which is a national line. And in July, that number will go live as 988. I'm happy to say that us advocates have been fighting for that. And so when you call that number, which I keep programmed into my phone, everybody should have that number programmed into your phone. And the reason why is because you never know when you will experience a crisis and you can be of help or assistance to someone or even yourself. Because these emotions creep in, and unless you're aware of what they look like and what could happen and how quickly it can happen, you then could fall into some of the same patterns that lead to a mental health diagnosis, as opposed to we all have mental health, because everyone has mental health. However, we all are not responding to everything, these variables, the same way. But we all have mental health, every single one of us, just like we all have physiological health.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Cooper Lovett, not just what are the signs and what we should look for, but when those folks come to us and you're stressed out, how can we, I don't know, kind of swallow what's going on with us so that we can be open to listen? Or do we need to say, you know what, let me find you someone else? Do you have time to try and work with someone in these situations?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it's a matter of the relationship, like the type of relationship that y'all have, because sometimes it's okay to co-create a safe space together to share each things with each other. That is not just one-sided, that we both can share these things with each other from a space of feeling safe, from a space of feeling connected. So it's just like, oh, wow. Sometimes it helps to say like, okay, good. I'm not the only one going through something. It helps to normalize the experience. Therefore, it makes the person more likely to share, especially if they're more apprehensive to do so. I think it helps to show your humanness to say like, hey, I got struggles too, and I'm kind of going through some things. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's like, hey, perhaps, I was been looking into these resources myself. Maybe this could be helpful for you as well, if it feels like it's too much.
And does seeing the sorrow after someone else does it, does that, I would think if you see how much sorrow people have that someone has left, would that make someone change their mind about this? Or it seems like they're coming in little, waves now.
Yeah, they are. And sometimes, whenever I've asked clients who are highly like suicidal, do you want to die or do you want the pain to stop? I have yet for someone to tell me that they want to die. Every single one of them have shared, I just want the pain to stop. And I always tell people it is an option. It's just a permanent one, but it is an option. However, it doesn't have to be the only option. There are other things that we can do. But in their mind, they feel like I have no other way out. I have to get out of this some kind of way. And this feels like the most viable option in the moment.
There are other options. And Ms. Brown, what I wanted to talk to you about, we've been seeing it on Netflix. We've seen it, on the news about the Tinder swindler. Now they've got the love stories with people getting ripped off with the cryptocurrency. Falling in love can be a dangerous thing to do, it seems. But how is it that we keep falling for these stories? This story of this Prince Charming who's rich and he's going to come in and save the day. And then 2 months later, he's asking you for money. But because you've believed the story so bad, you're giving them money. And that's a form of abuse too. I know it's not, what you typically think of as abuse, but these are and it's the same kind of story though in abusive situations where he's so nice, he's so charming, he's so this, he just occasionally might lose his temper and, punch a hole in the wall or something. But how can we change these stories so that we're not falling for these same kinds of, things over and over? When your gut is telling you, something isn't right, how is it that we're letting our mind, overtake that instinct that this is not for you?
Yes, that's a big one. And what I found is, number one, self-care, self-love. We all want to be in love with someone that's going to come in our knight in shining armor. Think about it. We grew up with the marriage, the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the relationship that all of us dream of having. And so when Prince Charming come along, then we get so and carried away with the whole hoopla of, I'm in love and he really loved me. With the swindler, for example, I'm sorry. I found myself like, listen, let's think about it. He's asking you for money. He's asking you for this, but they're so in love with that initial setting, the relative that I could like to call it. They show up and everything is perfect. So time, we have to learn to love ourselves. We have to learn to time for ourselves. Self-care. I know that I am one person that loves helping others. but I have time to stop for a moment and say, Theta, you are important too. Take the time to love yourself. Take the time to be with yourself. And I think that's where we kind of get lost in the whole moment. If you guys about this guy that I met and he's so fabulous and everything that I dreamed of. In the background, my gut is telling me he's asking me for money again. I'm sponsoring this person. And so then you become want to tell me and is asking you for all the money after you build up. So my thing is, ladies, gentlemen, or whomever, love yourself. Be the priority in your life, because when you're the priority, then you can put that stops up and say, hey, wait a minute, something is not right. And something is out there better for me.
That is love yourself first. And Dr. Cooper Levitt, can you give us some ways that we can make sure we're loving ourselves first?
Absolutely. It's definitely like Miss Vita shared, like self-care, and I always tell clients this every day. I often give doses of my own medicine because I was told the same thing about self-care, especially when you're pouring into others, but genuinely doing the things that you enjoy doing. The things, something I challenge my clients with, something that I learned during my spiritual path and tantra healing work was that it's called a pleasure reinforcement number. And so I have to dedicate a certain amount of time or hours to pleasure in my life.
Mhm.
Pleasure meaning like whether it's my favorite TV show, whether I mean my favorite ice cream, whatever brings me pleasure. I need to challenge myself to dedicate a certain amount of time per week. And so what I challenge my clients with is saying at least dedicate 11 hours a week to pleasure for yourself. Because it's about almost 170 hours in a week. We can at least give ourselves 11 hours. So it can be whatever it is you want it to be. The primary premise of it is that it brings you pleasure. That's the bottom line.
I love it. 11 hours a week of
At
pleasure
least.
time for self.
Yes.
I think that is something we can all start to practice. And Miss
Mhm.
Bell, what about you? How can we start to, I call it discipline our mind so that we know to take care of ourselves?
Well, one of the exercises we did in graduate school is we took an entire day and we wrote out minute to minute everything that we were doing. We then prioritized the things that we needed to do versus those things that were optional. We also shaved off time where we were sort of taking up time that could have been used more wisely. And once we did that, we saw how much time we actually utilize that is not geared towards our health, our wellness, and managing that on a regular basis. So once we did that, then we were charged with putting into our calendar a reminder. And of course, we all have phones and computers, and that would be the reminder that would pop up and say, you need to go take a nap. You need to go do this, or you need to go do that. And it was all geared towards helping us to maintain our individual wellness. So it looked different for each of our classmates. However, it was a way to discipline ourselves and to see where we were taking up time that could have been used more wisely.
And Miss Brown, I know when ladies come from your classes, they are empowered. And I know you hope they never forget how to love themselves. But how do you incorporate that? How do you get women and men who've been in these bad situations to kind of turn that around and start to love themselves?
Well, sometimes it's a hard process. And sometimes I allow them to tell me how they've been living, and they may define themselves as their partner in the negative relationship and define. Then I question, is that they think no. So tell me if it could look different. What would it look like to you? And for sometimes, and I'll give you an example. One of my clients today, I spoke with her and she said, I'm sitting in the back of the store. And I thought, why? To me, feeling in a lump. And when you ask that question, out of it. So just reminding people of who they are, self-love, self-care. And I give them an exercise depending on what it is that they tell me. And let's practice that. And we're going to do that until you get it in you are worth every minute of happiness, health, wellness. And like Dr. Levitt said, just we have. So I try to do what I can to encourage them. So we have a number of exercises, and we may take a field trip, to make sure in the motion of helping themselves to get out of a rut or whatever it is that they're feeling, and be happy and live in the moment, enjoy life, because it's so important. And not that anybody that's saying negative things about you define you as that person, because that's not you. I want them to create who they are and get a chance to experience. So we try whatever we can to encourage them to be their best self.
To be your best self and to try and be your better self as we continue to grow and love. Mm-hmm. So again, I kind of call it that discipline of the mind. And it's one of those things where sometimes your brain will start taking you down this rabbit hole, and you can go down that rabbit hole, or you can kind of say, look, I am in charge. I am not going down that rabbit hole today. But those are things that, I've learned over years. What are some of the things that you all share with people who are looking to, find a way to discipline those thoughts? Because we all get those, crazy thoughts. You forget to attach something to an email, and it's like they're going to fire you. And it's like, you're not the first one to forget to attach something to an email. You are not the last one that's going to forget to attach something to an email. But, your brain can play these little tricks on you, and then your heart is beating, you're not even thinking. So what are some of the things that you all advise your clients so that, we can grab back control of our minds and that conversation, that's ongoing? Dr. Cooper Lovett, you want to take this one first?
Sure. Yes, because I have a lot of clients who deal with anxiety and depression. I always say anxiety and depression are like first cousins. If you have one, you're usually dealing with the other. So with anxiety, it's this whole concept of like cognitive distortions. So it's kind of like the way our mind plays tricks on us. So, it'll take a factual piece of information and blow it up. And so it's like, okay, yes, if I get in the car today and drive, there is a chance I could get into an accident. There is no guarantee. A cognitive distortion would tell you, oh, when you get in this car today, you crash it. So it's just a matter of having control over your thoughts. And I always tell people that you don't want to be in the passenger seat. You should be in the driver's seat. Your brain should be in the passenger seat, because we need our brain. It's important. But I'm in control, not my brain. And I usually share with people, it's called, I say crush the ants, automatic negative thoughts. And so I usually tell them to do a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every negative thought, I should have 5 positives, but I am realistic. So I tell people for every 1 negative thought, you should have a positive thought to combat that. So for homework, sometime I'll give them like thought logs where it expresses like, okay, what was the trigger? What was the original thought? What is the alternative thought? And so we're just staying in the middle of the road, because we already know too well the negative side of things. And I can't tell people to take that away because they're so used to doing it. However, let's add to it and say, what about a positive thought to combat that negative thought? And when they start thinking that way, they start to feel like they have more control. And then over time, it's like, okay, now I got 2 positive thoughts to 1 negative. Now I got 3, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm thinking a completely different way versus the way I'm used to usually thinking. So it's about challenging yourself and trusting yourself that you are capable of having control over your mind.
Yay. We are capable to have control. And Ms. Bell, can you share as well?
Well, I completely concur with that from my training as well in graduate school. I will say also that having an accountability partner and or support people. So in NAMI, we focus on supporting people. You are not alone, which is one of our mantras. And one of the things that you can do is have somebody who is your accountability partner. So when you find yourself going down that rabbit hole, you call that person or you text that person so that this way you can start communicating with them and they can help bring you back or reel you back in instead of you continuing to go down that rabbit hole. So support is really important, and we focus on that in NAMI, and I wholeheartedly believe in that as a wellness consultant.
And Ms. Brown, I'm going to change it up a little bit for you. How can we as a culture start to kind of change that, knight in armor, savior? Because to me, I think it does a disservice to men as well as women. How can we start to change that story so that it's not, the dashing, charming guy, but it's the nice guy that really likes you, that becomes the hero?
I think if we are just realistic, we talk to our girlfriends and they tell you about the perfect relationship that they're having. And we all know that relationships requires work. And I think if we're realistic about those things, then we would come to understand that we put these guys on these pedestals and we expect for them to perform. And then the first chance that they act human, which is kind of take us out of being human when they put us on a pedestal, then I think it will work a lot better. So I like to talk about, this is so good. I like to talk about ourselves or have not ourselves or doing some things we like for ourselves and not waiting till Prince Charming come along and offer this to us. If we learn to love and be company with ourselves, then that makes a huge impact. And so you won't be so disappointed. And then by all means, when the representatives, then we're so disappointed. So just take the time, go slow, have the relationship, see something that's a little odd, a little strange, have a conversation about it. It's okay. And just be honest about who you are, who that is. And if you like them, let's figure it out so that we can have a good relationship. I don't think it's that hard, but I think we just have to get to that point where my husband is the best thing that ever happened in my life. To do that because they are kind and the best person, but but they're not perfect. And so I think if we think about that, I think that'll help us out so much.
They are not perfect, and we are all human, so none of us are perfect. And there is no perfect relationship. So, yeah, we've got to stop that, I think. So, ladies, one of the things that we wanted to make the connection with is the fact that your mental health does impact your heart health. And Dr. Cooper Lovett, I'll let you lead again on this one. Can we talk about that a little bit, about stress will kill you. And when you are stressed out, you are impacting your heart, whether you know it or not.
Absolutely. And I always tell my clients that. I tell people stress will literally real life kill you. And because of that, when you're in stress, it's kind of like your brain. What happens is that it produces a lot of cortisol. cortisol only should be released during fight, flight, or freeze. When I'm stressed, cortisol is being released into my system, therefore breaking down organs in my body, including the heart. The heart is where everything comes from. The heart is where, blood starts there and it ends there as it pumps out. So it's so important to be mindful of how your mental health affects your physical health. And then to even take it a step further, how your spiritual health affects your mental health, which affects your physical health. And so even when you think about spiritually, the heart, everything that comes from it, everything we do, everything we say pours from the heart. And so when we're not taking care of ourselves, when we're not taking care of our heart, when we're not taking care of our emotional and mental wellness, it starts to impact us all the way around. And so people oftentimes tend to separate the mental from the physical, from the spiritual, when they're all interconnected and intertwined. And that's where we start to have issues, because we believe that they're separate when they're actually connected. And when things in mental health, like for example, anxiety, when people have panic attacks or anxiety attacks, things become psychosomatic. So a lot of people, when they describe a panic attack, are saying, I feel like I'm literally having a heart attack, where it's not so much, it is adding pressure to the heart, but it's because of the mental state that you're in that's causing the impact on your heart. And so that's why it's so important to have all those things in alignment. And sometimes people do get overwhelmed, because it's like, gosh, I got to take care of my body, my mind, and my spirit. But it's like, yeah, you do. And that's the work. And
yeah, you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do. And Miss Bell?
I would concur with Dr. Lovett. When you take care of yourself from every perspective, which is holistically, then everything balances out. But when one thing is off, meaning, okay, I'm unhealthy socially, I'm unhealthy mentally, I'm unhealthy emotionally, and all these other areas physiologically, of course, things are going to continue to break down. But one of the things that we don't typically address, like you mentioned, in our culture, is our mental health. And mental health and wellness leads you to all other areas of health. If you have clarity of cognition, you're lucid in your understanding of things, your perspective of things, your interpretation of things, then you have the ability to have all other areas of health. So mental health is one of the ways in which you can maintain everything else. A testimony I'll just share real quickly. My mommy, when she was not well psychologically, her physical body began to break down. So she was experiencing psychosis. And as a result of that, she wasn't eating. So now you can fast. Intermittent fasts are healthy for you. However, she was not eating. So nutritionally, she was not sound. And as a result of that, we ended up in the emergency room where her organs were completely shutting down because she wasn't getting what she needed. So you see, if she was mentally healthy, she would not have starved herself in order to get to that point. So that's what I mean by your mental health leads you to every other area of your health.
And Miss Brown, I think people think in relationships that love really can conquer all, and that, it doesn't matter what's going on. If you love me, you'll just stay. You will be a part of my life because you love me. But a lot of times we have to learn that some people have to be loved from a distance because they can't be loved up close and personal. How can we help people to understand that part of the connection? When your family life is out of balance, when your love life is out of balance, that means physically, people talk about my heart hurts or my heart aches or I have a broken heart. It feels that way. Can you talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. That none of us want to believe that we've fallen in love with someone that would hurt us. That's number one. And so if it happens, we have to get past that whole idea of my heart is bleeding because this person hurt me. But again, it continues to go back to the same thing. We have to learn to love ourselves. I cannot stress that enough. And so a lot of my clients, they have to go, particularly if they're divorced or anything like that, they can't get past some sometimes unmet. And so to the point where they don't understand. They want to try to fix it. They want to encourage them to believe that you really do still love me. And so again, it goes back for me that all of us need to love ourselves first. And those sometimes the relationships just don't last. And so you have to be in a position that you can release that person so that you can the right person that you can connect with and communicate with and have a good, healthy, loving relationship.
Well, this is perfect timing because we just been joined by Dr. Jane Morgan, who also is known for her Pilates class, Pilates with Dr. Jane. And we were just talking about the connection between heart health and physical health. So Dr. Jane, can you just talk a little bit about that? Why it's so important for your mental health to be clear and lucid, as these ladies have been saying, because it'll impact your heart.
No, and it will. And obviously, research has borne out that Black women, have a great burden of stress that we carry. And not only do we have higher rates of cardiovascular and heart disease than other races or other women of other races, we have higher cardiovascular mortality in our pregnancies and after delivery of pregnancies. And we pass on those traits to our children because of the stress that we have in our pregnancy. Those factors, everything that's revved up during the pregnancy, is passed on to our children. We have this intergenerational cardiovascular disease. So we have to recognize that it begins even in utero. And what are we going to do about it? And maybe that's another way to think about it, especially if you're having families and you're having children, you're going, what is this stress doing to my baby? That will be a lifelong burden that my child will now have to carry because of changes that were going on in my body at the time. And how do we begin to break that cycle of all of these cardiac impacts that we have to our body and into society, which is very difficult because we live in a stressful society. It's not easy to be Black. It's not easy to be a woman. And we have both. And certainly under the last administration that was openly hostile to African Americans. And now we have an entire party that has taken up that mantle to really diminish and remove us if possible. So that's the type of stress that you can't really quantitate because it never goes away. It is pervasive in everything that you do, in every place that you go. And so we've got to begin to think about what is mindfulness. Obviously, how are we going to advocate for ourselves and for others as well? And unfortunately, that is our burden. And it looks as if that will be our burden for the rest of our lives. We must continue to advocate for ourselves and our children. But in the same time, how can we do that and not kill ourselves? And how can we do that and not pass it on to our children so our children can have a healthy torch to move forward and hopefully, a world that we can leave a better place. So I think mindfulness is very important. If you can just take some time out and just congratulate yourself for just showing up today. Sometimes that's all we can do. Maybe you didn't get your whole list done. Maybe nobody liked how you finished the report, but just congratulate yourself for showing up. What effort did it take for you to walk through that door today and actually be present? That is not equitable to the effort that it required for somebody else to be there. And so sometimes we've got to really understand what that is, whether we have our support systems, what those support systems are. Sometimes your support system, unfortunately, just has to be you. And if it's just you, unfortunately, and that's not the best avenue to take. But if your support system is just you, be kind to yourself. Sometimes just showing up Getting up and being present
Is enough.
requires a lot
Yes.
for Black women. Imagine that. Think about everything that's going on. Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and yet every single day we have to be at work as if nothing is happening. The stress that requires, the lack of acknowledgement by our employers that it's going, the lack of understanding that you are trying to manage that and do your job. So be kind to yourself, because not only does this shorten your life with heart disease, you pass it on during your pregnancy to your children. Society has not been fair to us. Hopefully we will continue to resist and come out on the other side. But in the meantime, practice mindfulness and what you need to do to keep yourself healthy and sane as we move forward and strong. Unfortunately, Black women have never had the luxury of being weak. To be weak means somebody is taking care of you. Not only taking care of you, taking care of everything you need is also going to catch you when you fall. We don't even live in a society that recognizes Black women. We don't have the luxury of being weak. So understand that mindfulness also increases your strength and increases your resilience. When I say strength, I don't mean, like a bull in a china shop, we're knocking everything down. That internal metric is going to get you up every day and have you face your day and do it again the next day. That requires quiet resolve and strength. And we have to pass that on to our children as well in a healthy way.
And now, Dr. Jane, how did you come to find Pilates, and what does Pilates can do for the rest of us, and what does it do for you?
So I tell you, I stumbled into Pilates, and you're going to hear a very, very vain story. So this was maybe, I'm thinking maybe 20 years ago now. And I was standing at the bus stop with my neighbor across the street. He's like 5 years older than I was, and then I am. She's still there. And we were there with our boys at the bus stop. And, it's the beginning of the school year in Georgia. It's August. It's hot. And that was like, for the last summer or two, I really hadn't worn shorts because my legs just didn't look the way they used to. And so I had on loose pants, and I came to the bus stop, and she was like in her short shorts. She's like 5 years older than I am. She was all toned. And I just asked her, and I said, oh my God, I don't even wear pants anymore. I don't even wear shorts anymore. And she says, oh, well, I do Pilates. I had heard of it. I didn't know much about it. And I was like, oh, really? So then the next time we were at the bus stop, we started chatting about Pilates. Then she invited me to her class. So I started doing Pilates. And next summer, I was in shorts. And I was like, okay, this is for me, right? I got to stand in shorts with my kids at the bus stop like she did. I've been in shorts ever since. That's a true story of how I started Pilates, because I wanted to wear shorts, and I was bummed out that I already was in long pants because my legs didn't look good. So I've been in shorts ever since. That's exactly how I started Pilates, very vain. And then I learned about the other benefits along the way and began to integrate. I'm a cardiologist. I began to integrate. I was like, oh my God, this is, it was kind of similar to cardiac rehab when I'm doing rehab with my patients and the exercises that we're doing, some of the physical therapy. And I started learning more and more about it. I started getting certifications. I started becoming friends with teachers, palling around with them when they were going for teaching certifications. Next thing you know, I had 17 certifications. I'm probably the most certified Pilates teacher ever because I was just doing it for fun, right? I just liked it. And then a few years ago, I actually just started teaching. And then during COVID, I took it online. I always taught in person. I taught at LA Fitness. I taught at health clubs. And then I took it online for COVID with Pilates with Dr. Jane. And I've been teaching online. But literally, no health benefits. That was not why I started Pilates. I asked her how she was wearing shorts. She said she did Pilates. I did Pilates for a year. I got to wear shorts, and that was it. So I'm just doing Pilates now. So that's actually how it started. So sometimes God just takes you like a circuitous way.
And Pilates is thought to be a moving meditation. It is a way to have mindfulness. And a lot of folks think the only way you can meditate is if you're sitting still somewhere. But can you share how that is a moving meditation or a practice of meditation?
Is. Yeah. And, there's so many different movements in Pilates, and it's not as similar to yoga as people think. Yoga is, Pilates is much more movement. Yoga is, maybe slower. I don't want to use the word slow because I'm not trying to denigrate it, but it's more holding positions and getting into positions. Pilates is more moving through positions and coming back and moving through them and coming back and moving through them. And in that way, it's kind of more similar to ballet and floor exercises. So it's, but I think, there are some yoga components to it as well. There definitely is crossover. But I've had people do Pilates and they were like, oh my God, that's not yoga. No, it's not yoga, but it's yoga-ish. There's some parts of it that are yoga-ish.
Can you show us a little move?
Yeah, let's show some stuff. Can you guys see me?
Yes.
So I kept everything down. So here I am on my mat. And maybe what I'll just show you is a sideline leg series. So I'm lying here on my side. I've got my hips stacked, my knees stacked, my ankles stacked. I'm in a completely straight line. I'm going to lie down with the most points of contact on the mat. So that means my entire torso is lying down. So I don't have to worry about supporting this torso and developing it in a way that is not in alignment with my body. As you get more advanced, you can do movements up on your elbow. And you see here, I'm nice and straight. The reason this is a more advanced movement is because most of us, when we're up on our elbow, will sort of slouch like this. You see this big curve in my rib cage. I don't want my body to develop this way. So this is a more advanced movement. I'm going to push away with my elbow, and then push away with my shoulder. See how my chest opens? I'll be here. So this is a more advanced position. You pick your hand up and you're balancing on one elbow. Here, all of these are more advanced movements, but I'm going to start with the most points of contact so I don't even have to worry about that. Very simple movement. We'll start with my feet are flexed, and I'm just going to take my leg up and down, right? Just warming myself up. Side lying leg position. I am in parallel. Everything is facing forward. Nothing is externally rotated. Nothing is facing the ceiling. Everything is facing forward, and it actually restricts my movement, right? I don't have a lot of movement. What do we focus on in Pilates? We focus on form over range of motion. It doesn't matter how much range of motion you have. So if I keep my legs suspended, I now can work and bring my bottom leg up and try to tap my ankles here. Bringing my bottom leg up to meet my top leg this way. Part of that sideline leg series. I can point my top toes and do nice circles, ballet circles. Again, controlling it. I'm not doing big loops with my legs. I'm doing tight, small loops, controlling this movement, going in both positions. But at the same time, I've got my belly pulled up, I have my hips tucked, and I'm in a nice, tight position, and I am controlling it. Things that look like ballet. Here's a développé. I can extend to the ceiling and then flex my foot down. Point. And I tell you, people who take my class know that I like pointing and flexing. It is a simple way to sneak in nice inner thigh work by pointing and flexing. Not only inner thighs, but calves. You see people with beautiful calves and beautiful legs like ballerinas. That's all that pointing and flexing. So I développé in, I point up to the ceiling, and I flex down. So that's just an example. You want to look at some things that we might do with our arms. I would come up here. This is a mermaid position. You see, I'm sitting like a mermaid. My arms are out. If it's hard for you to bend your knees, you can also move to a West Coast version, which is a Z position. So I'm going to open my legs, and you see the front of my leg will line up with my mat, and I bring my leg back, my left leg back. That allows you to sit up straighter and taller if you have any issues with flexion, and many of us do. So it just depends, and we have lots of different modifications for this. So my arm is out. This is single arm tricep push-up. It is exactly what it is, a single arm tricep push-up. I'll take my right hand, wrap it across my body, hold onto my waist. My left hand will come across, be flat on the mat, And I'm simply going to bend that left elbow and push myself back up. Bend it and push myself back up. Each time I'm pushing myself away, working the back of my arm, working right here, that tricep, single arm tricep push-ups. My upper body is actually the barbell. It's the weight that I'm pushing away. Do that each time. The other thing that maybe you think about when you think about Pilates is this forward flexion position. Here we are in tabletop position. My head and my shoulders are curved forward. This is forward flexion, where I can now isolated movement. All I'm doing is dropping this leg. But in dropping the leg, you can see I'm not extending it and I'm not bending it, right? It's just a lever goes down like a machine. This is an isolated movement. I'm actually working from my hip.
Core, yeah.
With my ab. The lever goes down. The lever comes up. In forward flexion, head, neck, and shoulders are forward. I'm deep in my abs. And what am I doing? I'm working these two big strap muscles in my neck as well. Sternocleidomastoids. These two muscles hold your neck upright. They get older. Our heads are heavy. What happens? These muscles get lax and our head starts to drop forward. And then what? It pulls our neck forward. And then what? It pulls our shoulders forward. And next thing you know, we're stooping. So now we rebuild these muscles, strengthen them such that it can hold us up nice and straight and beautiful. And we have nice upright gait. And we continue to be able to move gracefully and easily and continue to focus. As you're doing Pilates, focus with your mind because you're not moving all parts of your body. You're stabilizing some muscles and moving one particular group. And we want the form to be the most important thing over range of motion. So we take an hour just to focus on getting the movement right and get deep into our mind and try to just get focus on our bodies and get rid of the day and have 1 hour. I always say 1 hour a day. As women, we work so hard for everybody else. Take 1 hour a day where you work hard for yourself. I've had people say, oh, Pilates is hard, but you've been doing hard work all day for somebody else. And then when it gets time to do hard work for yourself, you won't do it. Do something, and I'm not saying it's hard. I'm just saying I've heard people say, oh, that's too hard, but you work hard for everybody else. Why don't you work hard for yourself?
I love that.
We need to think about and begin to invest in our bodies and don't worry about whether you can do everything on the first day or the first month. My motto is do what you can, stop whenever you want to, jump back in when you're ready. This is about your journey. I do 20 reps. If you can do 2, do 2. Next week, try to do 3. Stay at 3 for 3 months. Then try to move to 4. This is about you getting better than you were the day before. And that's what I like about being online as well, because you can't see what anybody else is doing. And usually everybody just blacks it out. And I don't know if people are naked. I don't know what they're doing. And I try to give good instruction. And then you literally can be in your home and not worried about the super fit person in class who can do everything. And you're sweating and huffing and puffing. You take your own journey in the privacy of your home. And then if you have any questions, you can talk about it in class, or you can text or call me later. And so this is kind of what we do. So take an hour. It's not even an hour every day. People come once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Take an hour to focus on yourself. It will save your life, literally.
It will literally save your life.
About.
Well, ladies, I want to just tell you, I have enjoyed this conversation. We have touched on a lot of things, and we're at the end of the hour. So I'm just going to ask one more time, if you could tell us one thing that we can all start to do to increase our mental health, our mental stamina, and make sure that we're taking care of our heart. Ms. Bell, we're going to start with you.
Well, to increase your mental health, I would say to be aware of what your mental health is. Where is it? And then to increase it, I would definitely say to become more educated about how to maintain your health holistically. and that will help you to maintain your mental health.
And Miss Brown?
Self-care, love yourself, take time for yourself. And thank you, Dr. Morgan, for reminding me about mindfulness. That is so important. And just be in that women, and we're doing some great things. Love yourself.
Thank you. And Dr. Cooper Levette?
Yes, I always tell my clients that whenever you're pouring, I always look at our own way of self-care as pouring into ourselves like a cup. And so I feel that, anytime I pour out into someone else, I should always be pouring from my overflow. It should never come from my main source. And so that's something, in addition to reiterating the pleasure reinforcement number, doing at least those 11 hours a week. If we can get ourselves up to 20 hours a week, that would be optimal, but let's start at 11.
11 hours a week of self-pleasure, everybody. I love that. And Dr. Jane, that one thing that we can all start doing to make sure that we have better mental and physical health.
Yeah, listen, the one thing that you could really do to have better mental and physical health is to follow me on social media. and I would tell you, I have multiple pages. I have a Dr. Jane Morgan page where I dedicate, really just all science all the time. If you want to learn about COVID, you just come. It's nothing about politics. I sit on the stairs and literally in 60 seconds or less, I take one question about COVID, one question about a COVID vaccine, and I answer it in very conversational terms within 60 seconds. And this week, I actually dedicated the Stairwell Chronicles to heart health. And I talked a lot about the health in the 60 seconds. I talked a lot about symptoms during your pregnancy that increase your risk of heart disease and what those symptoms are and what you should be aware of. The other thing is also, I've got a Pilates page, Pilates with Dr. Jane. You can sign up for any of my classes on there virtually, or you can hit me up on text message, take Pilates. If you don't take Pilates, do something else. Take a walk in the rain, whatever it is. Get your body moving where you can free yourself, and it's about your time. But I welcome everybody to join my classes, Pilates with Dr. Jane, Jayne on Instagram, and to also follow me for all science all the time. And the reason I say that that's healthy is it's not disinformation. This is true science. It's not politics. It's not social media nonsense. And I make a point of being a sound, valid voice of science. My full-time job is I'm the executive director of the COVID task force for Piedmont Healthcare. Piedmont's the largest healthcare system in the state of Georgia. I carry that over to my Stairwell Chronicles series on social media. All of my news interviews, CNN, everything I post there, it's only to fight disinformation. So feel free.
Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned some things. I'm going to implement that 11 hours every week of self-pleasure. Miss Monique, I'm going to check out those resources at NAMI, Georgia. And Veda, I am never going to believe in the knight in shining armor coming to rescue me. I can rescue myself. And Dr. Jane, thank you so much for that. Those exercises, I can do that because, like I said,
we can do it all.
Core. We can do it.
Join me, and we've got to take care of ourselves and each other.
We do. We have to take care of
times. Extraordinary times require extraordinary measures and extraordinary people. And
I agree. And I want to thank Carmelita Gumps and the city of South Fulton for bringing us all together. Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.